Right, so Israel meddling in the goings-on of the British judiciary, interfering in British court cases. Can you imagine such a thing ever happening under the pro-Zionist governments of both Tories and Labour alike? Well, if you watch this channel regularly, I would imagine that yes, you can. So as much as it might shock you, it might come as no surprise that evidence of just such collusion has come to light, and that the Israeli influence on our legal system is rather specific, to the tune of pro-Palestine activists very much being the target of said interference, notably insofar as details have been uncovered in relation to the Filton 18 Palestine Action activists, 10 of whom have now been held in detention awaiting trial for 8 months so far, for an attack on Israeli arms manufacturer Elbit Systems in Filton, and the Instro 10 as well, again Palestine Action activists who did likewise at Instro Precision, a subsidiary of Elbit. Palestine activists who certainly did cause damage, instead of being prosecuted for criminal damage that they caused though, have instead been held under terror charges, and with signs of collusion between the Office of the Attorney General and the Israeli Embassy in London, and more communiques going back several years that have been uncovered, besides a direct link between the UK and Israel to interfere in the prosecution of pro-Palestine and anti-Israel protesters very much does appear to exist. Just whose side is the law on anymore in which case? Britain's or Israel's? Right, so the UK establishment, in apparent collaboration with the State of Israel, is targeting British citizens protesting Israeli war crimes, and the arms companies enabling them to see them prosecuted not for the criminal damage they might have caused, regardless of how you might feel about their direct action, but as terrorists instead. These protesters, far from engaging in terrorism, chose to express their disdain and disgust not through peaceful protest, but by breaking stuff. We've a long history of direct action here in the UK as it happens. It's not the focus of this story. It's how this group of activists chose to exercise their deeply held moral and political opposition to the ongoing genocide in Gaza, and what you think about their methods is another story. But instead of being treated as the activists they are, instead of being prosecuted for the damage they caused, they're being prosecuted under the UK's counter-terrorism laws instead, and we should all have a problem with that. Let the punishment fit the crime. The CPS sets sentences for criminal acts, but all of a sudden, an attack on an Israeli arms manufacturer is no longer a crime of vandalism, but terrorism. On what planet can that possibly be right? How jeopardised is our right to protest as a result of this? This is Orwellian stuff. This inversion of justice raises serious questions about the independence of the British legal system itself and the extent of foreign interference in its institutions. And yet again, we're talking about Israel. Central to all of this, of course, is the treatment of these Palestine Action activists, particularly those involved in actions targeting Elbit Systems, the aforementioned abhorrent Israeli arms manufacturer with operations here in the UK. The case in question here involves 18 activists, now known as the Filton 18, who were arrested after disruption of operations at Elbit site in Filton, hence the name. 3 months prior to the arrest of 10 of these individuals, though, officials from the UK Attorney General's office had shared the contact details of investigating officers with the Israeli embassy. Why was that then? For what purpose could that possibly have been appropriate? According to documents obtained through Freedom of Information requests, this move was followed by a second wave of arrests. 8 more activists were detained, hence they're now the Filton 18, and all are currently held under counter-terrorism powers. The activists were accused of criminal damage, and certainly they did do that. But that's not litigated under terrorism offences, is it? It was a strike on a factory. So what if the company is Israeli? It's still only a strike on a factory. The motivations of those involved are irrelevant when it comes to the actual crime itself. But Israel, well, they get special treatment again, it seems. Their factories get greater protection than British ones, clearly, because terrorism charges carry far heftier sentences. The confinement of these 18 individuals under the UK's counter-terrorism regime has set a brand new, really dangerous precedent. Even more revealing is that UN Special Rapporteurs weighed in on this as well. They've condemned their detention too, highlighting how grossly disproportionate the response by the British authorities has been in this case. And to see how we got here, we have to go back a little bit, because it's the culmination of years of increasingly cosy cooperation between UK authorities and the Israeli government, which I will come on to in a moment. Evidence of systematic collusion between the UK's top legal officials and Israeli diplomats is impossible to ignore. An especially damning document obtained by the Grey Zone reveals that the Attorney General's office provided guidance to Israeli officials on avoiding arrest warrants for war crimes while assuring them that the Crown Prosecution Service had strengthened procedural safeguards to prevent such warrants being issued. In effect, the British legal apparatus now appears to be actively shielding Israeli war criminals from accountability while simultaneously persecuting those protesting against their crimes, even under terror legislation. As an example, you can take the treatment of the Filton 18 on one hand and then look at how the likes of Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar could visit and meet with David Lammy here in the UK a few weeks ago without fear of any arrest, as an attempt to actually obtain a warrant against him was blocked. Saar was all ready to jump back on a plane and escape when he heard that were moves being made to issue an arrest warrant against him, but Lammy got him those assurances from somewhere, didn't he? Makes you wonder if even an ICC arrest warrant would have any value should Netanyahu himself come to the UK, doesn't it? The Attorney General Office's communication with the Israeli embassy went further, sharing contact information for counter-terrorism police and CPS officials involved in ongoing investigations into Palestine Action activists. Does this not amount to operational collaboration then? Legal experts and human rights organisations have described this as a breach of legal norms and a clear instance of foreign interference in domestic judicial processes. That just feels like a bit of an understatement to me. The actions taken against the Filton 18 and the Instro 10, who were another group of Palestine Action activists who were arrested after a protest at Instro Precision, another Elbit supplier, cannot be seen as isolated incidents. Israel is very much the common denominator here. These prosecutions are the culmination of years of political collusion. I said I would come back to this point. In 2022, the then Home Secretary Priti Patel, she who was forced to resign previously as International Development Minister for meeting with Israeli officials behind the government's back. There are few as hardened in their pro-Israel leanings as she is, going by her record. Anyway, she met with Elbit UK CEO Martin Fawcett at that time, and the explicit purpose of the meeting apparently was to reassure Elbit that the UK government took the actions of Palestine Action very seriously. It has to be noted that before that meeting took place, not one Palestine Action member had ever been convicted for their protests. Yet within months, the British state was then appealing the acquittal of 4 activists who toppled the statue of Edward Colston in Bristol in 2020, signalling something of a new willingness to reframe protest as criminality, especially when it comes to stuff like this, a dangerous precedent, since the right to protest is of course enshrined in our human rights. But it now looks like Israel doesn't like that, and what Israel wants, well, we know how that goes here in the UK these days, don't we? This trend has accelerated under, for example, the National Security Act of 2023. This was brought into effect in December of that year, and the Act includes numerous clauses that appear to be tailor-made to suppress Palestine Actions campaigns particularly. Activists involved in non-violent direct actions, smashing windows, chaining themselves to factory gates, occupying buildings, are now being prosecuted with tools previously reserved for terrorism suspects. And so we find ourselves where we do now, with this expose in the here and now in relation to Elbit and Instro. The pervasive influence of the Israeli government now appears to extend deeply into the UK's prosecutorial and judicial systems, having moved on from just the diplomatic. The result has been the erosion of foundational legal standards and the upholding of our rights in favour of foreign policy objectives more aligned with those of Tel Aviv. Palestine Action's co-founder Huda Amori has vocally decried the Israeli influence over British prosecutions, and her concerns are clearly not without merit, are they? The targeting of anti-genocide activists under terrorism laws, that is bluntly the killer sentence there, isn't it? If you're anti-genocide, you could now be labelled a terrorist in the UK if you choose to match words with deeds. And then there is the communication of counter-terrorist contacts to a foreign embassy, and the zeal with which these activists are pursued, all suggesting a judiciary co-opted by the political interests of others. The fact that none of the charges, criminal damage as it was, aggravated burglary, violent disorder, fall within the legal parameters of terrorism in any way, shape or form, makes the invocation of counter-terror laws in these cases particularly egregious and certainly sinister. Why would the British government go to such lengths as these? One obvious answer is the multi-billion-pound arms trade, of course, between the UK and Israel. Elbit Systems plays a central role in this relationship. Its drones, its weapons systems, its surveillance technologies are not only used in Gaza, but also field-tested there, making Gaza something of a laboratory for deadly weapons. By targeting Elbit Systems, Palestine Action is not just protesting Israel's genocide in Gaza, it's directly challenging the financial interests that tie the UK to Israeli militarism. The UK government's complicity is further underscored by its silence in the face of these legal abuses. Neither the Conservative-led government nor the Labour opposition under Keir Starmer have raised serious concerns. And why would they, when they've proven so convenient for them in clamping down on protests on so many other occasions? The implications of this collusion go far beyond the Palestine Action movement, though, because with all of this having come out, though notably mostly in foreign and independent media, it has to be said, at stake is the very integrity of Britain's legal system. The weaponisation of counter-terror laws to silence protest is a horrifying precedent. The outsourcing of judicial decisions to foreign governments should obviously never happen under any circumstances. And the abandonment of free speech and civil liberties in the name of diplomacy and commerce all point to a state in democratic, not to mention ethical and moral decline. It's imperative, therefore, that British citizens, civil society organisations, legal professionals are made more aware of this more widely and start demanding accountability for it. The independence of the judiciary must be preserved, otherwise what is it worth? Not only as a safeguard for protesters, but it's a cornerstone of our democratic governance. Parliament must launch a full public inquiry into the UK-Israel collusion that's been exposed here. And those responsible for breaching prosecutorial codes have got to be held account for that. Furthermore, international watchdogs, including the UN, should continue to scrutinise the UK's treatment of Palestine solidarity activists. The charges against the Filton 18 and the Instro 10 must be re-evaluated, and their detainment under counter-terror provisions, as ridiculous as they are, should absolutely be rescinded. It is a barbaric abuse of the legal system that they be prosecuted as terrorists. Protest, particularly when aimed at preventing war crimes, is not terrorism. It is the total antithesis of that. The collusion between UK prosecutors and the Israeli government is not merely a legal scandal, it is a moral failure. In a time when Gaza is being decimated by a brutal and ongoing genocide, it is not those who speak out against the bloodshed who should be in the dock, but those who enable and profit from it. The British state, in aligning itself with an occupying power and criminalising its own citizens for resisting that power, is now miles away from the path of justice. It is the duty of all those who believe in democracy, human rights and the rule of law to speak out, to protest and to demand that Britain stop enabling war crimes. The story of the Filton 18, the Instro 10 and all Palestine Action activists is not just about repression, it's about resistance. It's about the power of ordinary people to challenge injustice and the lengths to which states, including this one, will clearly go to silence them. Sometimes it is the Israeli and the UK that gets silenced, though. Despite evidence emerging of collusion between the UK and the Israeli embassy, the ambassador resident in that embassy, a woman who should have been expelled years ago, in my view, Zippy Hotovelli, got given the interview beasting she's had a long time coming at the hands of all people, Piers Morgan this week. And as much as it grates me to admit it, Morgan hit her with all the right questions that she had no answers to. Catch a clip of that and get all the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I will hopefully catch you on the next video. Cheers, folks.